More spending cuts was the call from the Chancellor George Osborne today in his first big speech of the new year. Speaking in Birmingham, Mr Osborne laid out plans for a permanently smaller welfare system and a £25 billion reduction in spending following next year's election. It came under attack immediately from both Labour, who called it a smokescreen designed to hide the cost of living crisis, and by his own coalition partners, the Liberal Democrats. Our economics editor, Ed Conway, reports now from Birmingham.
What better way to start the new year than doing precisely what you've been doing for the past few years? George Osborne rang in 2014 by donning the familiar high-vis jacket and visiting yet another factory. The only difference this time around is that, if anything, the language was even more pessimistic.
2014 is the year of hard truths, the year when Britain faces a choice. Do we say the worst is over? Or do we say to ourselves, yes, because of our plan, things are getting better, but there is still a long way to go, and there are big underlying problems we have to fix in our economy?
There's a reason for the downbeat tone. Economic growth may be on the rise, but by other measures, Britain is still nowhere near where it needs to be.
Now, it won't have escaped your attention if you've ever watched any of these speeches by George Osborne that they, generally speaking, are set in places like this, factories. And there's a reason for that. It's rebalancing. He wants to show that the UK is now, once again, pumping out goods around the world. It's not just reliant on consumer spending and debt. But when you look a little bit more closely at the details, you can see one that stands out. This factory was producing goods for none other than MG Rover, a company that was British but was bought up by the Chinese.
The good news, though, is that that money is starting to filter down the supply chains.
I think that British industry is starting to look healthier. I think it's the first time we can look forward and say that we've got orders on the books for the next 2 to 3 years. So for me, it's fantastic.
A few miles away in central Birmingham, the hard truths the Chancellor talks about have already sunk in. Now, on top of the existing plan, the government wants a further £25 billion of spending cuts. £12 billion of that is due to come from the welfare budget. The leader of Birmingham City Council thinks the cuts will mean the end of local government as we know it.
Any further cut in housing benefit, as suggested by George Osborne, is going to, I think, result in further rent arrears. Of course, the burden is then being passed from central government to local government here. We'll have to pick up the problems that result from a cut in housing benefit.
A smaller state, though, is precisely what this man is after. His message is very simple. Prepare yourself for more of the same. More austerity, more pain, and just maybe an economic recovery. Happy New Year. Ed Conway, Sky News in Birmingham.
Let's bring in our political editor, Adam. Good evening, Adam. Curious, people have been left a bit baffled by Mr Osborne, no doubt, because there's lots of talk of the economy picking up, and yet he's now talking about yet more cuts, and that really seems to have got under the skin of his coalition partners, the Liberal Democrats.
Yes, we've seen Nick Clegg differentiating himself from the Conservatives, saying that he doesn't think that this is necessarily the way to go ahead. But that, in a sense, was the reason why George Osborne gave this speech. He didn't say anything radically new, but in the new year, he said, look, things are getting better in the economy, but in his view, the austerity has been worth it, but it's got to carry on. And really, in his sights too, of course, he had the Labour opposition. No doubt about it that in the last quarter of last year, ever since the party conferences, they made some ground complaining about the cost of living. And what Mr Osborne wanted to do today was to claim that Conservative policies are working, but that he understands that most people know that that means that in their pockets they have felt a squeeze and they have felt a lot of pain. And of course, one thing he does have going for him is that when it comes to cutting back on welfare, opinion polls tell us that that is quite a popular idea. There is a general perception amongst the public that there are some people who are taking the mickey in terms of receiving welfare benefits.
Thanks, Adam.